All right, our final presenter is Mr. Matthew Leggett. He is the Director of IT Architecture at Nationwide. Today he's going to be talking to us about the infrastructure, or the next generation infrastructure and cloud computing. So please help me in welcoming Mr. Matthew Leggett.
Thank you all. You've had the pleasure of hearing from Buzz before me, so there's going to be a couple slides in here I'm going to go through very quickly, but it's actually a very interesting story how Buzz and I work together, especially with the information you guys just got from your peers who have been at OU before. Again, a lot of really good information there that I would tell you to take heed in. What they said is 100% true. Hire a lot of people, so those are some of your best opportunities to look at what people have done before you to move forward with your careers. So Nationwide, my title is Director of IT Architecture. Been at Nationwide for about 18 years, and I have done pretty much most technology jobs that Nationwide has to offer. Been a network engineer, been a middleware engineer, worked on the ops side, architecture for the past 11 years. So I have a lot of experience to pull from, and today I'm kind of going to give you some insight into where Nationwide is heading, also where kind of the world is heading, right? With the career path that you guys are looking on, you're really, really in an exciting place. And just from a Nationwide perspective, so Nationwide is, you saw this slide before, it's a big company, right? We are just under 10,000 IT associates, 40,000 associates overall. So it's a big, big company. And one of the interesting things about working for a big company is you have the opportunity to do multiple things, even if it's just in technology space. You can hear some of the things I've done. I've got peers that have gone across lines and worked outside of the business, worked in marketing, and that's one of the advantages you get for working with a large company, right? You heard from the gentleman that works for Progressive. I also want to remember at the end to talk to you a little bit about the departmentalization question that the gentleman asked, because that's really one of the changes that we're starting to see and that you're going to start seeing with some of the stuff I'm showing you today is departmentalization and how these big companies work is actually changing, and it's a really exciting time to work for a big company that needs to take all these influences that I'm going to show you and figure out how to make them work for themselves, right? So large company, again, this slide you've already seen as well. Interesting part about Nationwide, a little bit deeper. Again, I talked about a 10,000 person IT shop. I work in a structure called Infrastructure and Operations. It's heavily, obviously, infrastructure based. We're just over 1,200-ish people, I think, at last count. And that is a subset of the entire IT community. So within the group that I work with, which is also where Jim works, Buzz, the person that we talked to you about cybersecurity, works outside that organization. We do all your typical database engineering, network engineering, all the operations work, right? Keeping the lights on, making sure the servers are running, right? All of those things happen. And in that group, you have not only opportunities to learn different skills and grow your skills, but you have the opportunity to move outside, right? We have finance departments. Part of my responsibilities in the architecture organization is to work with our finance departments. And for me, going back to some of your previous classmates here that went through that, I also have a finance degree. And that's been something that's very, very helpful. So I'd remind you that as you look at this and as you take these big companies and you see all these things up here, the numbers, right? $200 billion in assets, right? That's a really big company. The thing that I want you guys to concentrate on is within those big companies, everything seems so large and oversized and maybe scary at first. It really is a great opportunity to get your foot in the door in a place where, again, I don't remember his name, the gentleman who was a consultant. You can move around, right? I've gone in many different places. I've got many opportunities within both my previous years at Nationwide and my future years at Nationwide just because of the breadth of the company. So I just wanted to kind of say a few different things than what Buzz did about that. But really, again, I'm going to concentrate on specifically Nationwide's cloud journey, which we're calling next generation infrastructure. If you look up next generation infrastructure on Google, it's not going to tell you anything specific. That's just what we're calling it. So I'm going to give you some highlights into that. And really what you're going to see here is I'm going to start going through this at a high level. Nationwide is an insurance and financial services company, right? So I'm going to take us down the insurance path, and then I'm going to show you some of these technology trends that are influencing the things we do on the insurance side from a technology perspective. So I like this slide, and I grabbed it from a deck somewhere I found previously. And it's a very interesting slide because what it shows all the influences, right? So Nationwide is an insurance company, but we have a lot of influences that are really important, not only to our business people, but people like me who are trying to develop the next levels, next capabilities we're going to offer from a company perspective. So if you look at the top, you see all the people influences, right? We have a customer base. It's very large. How they want to interact with us is very important. What they need from us is very important. And the fact that I have money in the bank to pay claims for them when they have a problem is very, very important. So huge amounts of influence. At the bottom, you see market boundaries, right? These are all the things that are changing in the insurance industry, right, that I have to keep up with. Constant regulations, right? Constant sales volumes, constant things that are making my market change as well. The part I'm going to talk to you about today is the middle part, right? You look at the key things there, you see emerging technologies, explosion of new data, pay-as-need insurance enterprise, platform solutions. These are all things that I'm, from an architecture perspective in Nationwide, working to try to bridge gaps between where we are and where this is going to be in the future. And honestly, it's a really exciting time to be able to do that from both an insurance perspective and just a technology perspective overall. This next slide is really just kind of an attention-getting slide. Again, I stole it from someone, but I thought it was really important to kind of help you guys understand the world that we deal with today, right? You're just getting started in your careers. My career has been shaped heavily by many of the things you see on here, and I work for an insurance company. And again, I'm going to hopefully in the next couple slides here kind of help you understand how that all flows together. But if you look at this slide in the minute, it tells you, the middle, it tells you what the slide is about, and it says every minute of the day. And just to look at a few of those things, and again, to kind of tell you the technology landscape that we're working with, again, this is bigger than just Nationwide, but it also affects Nationwide. So I'm a Snapchat user, and I think I'm doing something wrong because this slide tells me that people view 7 million videos every minute. So I must not know how to use it. Truly amazing amounts of data being transferred, things that are being done. If you look at the Siri requests, right, 100,000 Siri requests every minute, right? Clearly, there's people that want to use Siri for things like potentially buying insurance, right? You got Amazon Echo, right? Part of stuff that we're looking at Nationwide is using these new services that people are bringing to the marketplace and figuring out how to loop them in to buying insurance, right? If you have to pay your premium, right? One of the things we're working on now, we also have Apple Pay, right? So we're working on that, new technology trends. We've got it instantiated. It actually works at Nationwide. You can pay your bill with Apple Pay. But we'd like you to be able to just talk to your Amazon Echo device and say, pay my Nationwide insurance bill, right? Those are things that are changing because of the influence of all these things from the external world, right? So I'm not going to go through all of them, but really if you look at them and if you look at the slide in detail, it's just a major change over the past, I'll say, 10 years from what you've seen in the marketplace. And it has everything to do with insurance, just like it has everything to do with technology. The last one I'll leave you with, which I think is an astonishing number on this slide, the Amazon number on the left in purple makes $222,000 in sales every minute, right? So some of my examples in the next few slides are going to talk about Amazon, and it's going to talk about the difference between how a typical established organization like Nationwide is changing to make their models look more like Amazon from a cloud perspective, from an agile development perspective, and those sorts of things. And the reason they're doing it is because of things like that, right? They make money for what they sell. They need to do it quickly. They need to do it securely, right? That type of influence makes everyone, even an insurance company, need to change the landscape of their technology portfolio. If you guys have questions on any of this as I'm going through, please feel free to ask your hand. We will have time at the end, but I have no problem with answering questions as we go. So this slide, again, I'm going to take you down from kind of just industry trends to now, world trends to industry trends. So if you look at this slide, you see things on here that should be pretty interesting to you, right? If I was starting a career today, I would look at some of this stuff and say, man, that'd be cool. Wouldn't it be a cool job if I could work on drones, right? And figure out how drones work? Drones are actually something Nationwide is investigating, right? Why? We need to do claims on roof damage, right? We usually send a person up there, they have a ladder, they might fall off, got all kinds of people that don't like that. If I have a drone do it, right? I send a drone out, I get the information, I bring it back. It's quicker, it's cheaper, I don't have to worry about all the liability, right? I get my pictures instantaneously, and what's it really do for me? It makes my customer happy, right? They get their check to fix their roof the next day as opposed to the next week, right? Whatever it may be. But you see some things up here, again, these are all changes in the industry, and almost all of them are something's happening at Nationwide with each one of them, right? Chatbots, right? People want to know what their premium is for the next month. People want to know when their payments due, things like that. Internet of Things, a really, really interesting space that I would suggest all of you do anything you can to learn more about. How does that affect an insurance company? If you think about it, actually Jim and I not too long ago met with some technology partners that you would recognize if I said their names, talking about sensors on your water pipes, right? And why is that important for an insurance company? Because an insurance company doesn't actually want that water pipe to burst, right? We protect you if it does, but we really don't want it to burst. And if it does, most of the damage when that happens comes from the time spent, right? You go to work in the morning, your pipe bursts at 9 o'clock, you get home at 5 o'clock at night and you go, uh-oh, I got a big problem. What if I knew when that pipe burst immediately? What if I could tell you as a customer, right? Now I'm going to tell you information that's not only valuable to me, but it's valuable to you as a homeowner, right? You leave the house at 9 o'clock and I send you a text and say, hey, we see water in your basement, you might want to check it. That's a huge value add from a customer perspective, right? That might differentiate me from someone else. And there's a whole bunch of technology, right, specific to those use cases that we have to develop, right? I have to figure out how to get the data. I got to figure out where the data goes, right? Do I want to keep the data local? Do I want to put the data in the cloud, right? How do I incentivize people to use these things, right? You've seen Nationwide has a Smart Ride program, right? We put a little dongle in your car on your OBD2 sensor, and if you drive really well and you're a good driver and you don't slam on the brakes, it's great for us. We know you're a good driver, right? We try to gather data from as many sources as possible, and data science, again, huge, huge career paths moving forward. But what I'll tell you about data and data science is it all still has to go somewhere, and there still has to be someone to make it work, right? So the data's great, but without all the other things that make it happen and getting a connection from one place to the other and storing the data and obfuscating, never mind, I'm not going to figure that word. Buzz uses that word all the time, right? Making the data unreadable and all those things. Those are things we deal with from a technology perspective in Nationwide every day. And they're different, right? Some businesses do it one way, some businesses do another. My financial services business, right, huge portion of Nationwide doesn't really have a use for drones, right? But my insurance side of my business does. Some other stuff up there that's interesting. A gentleman, I can't remember if he was up here or not, talked about using Watson, right? So we're doing experiments and innovation work with Watson, right? Where would you do that at a Nationwide company? Well, it's in my call center, right? If somebody calls in and I get common calls, every time the 10 calls of every day is the same question. I can automate that, right? I can get them an answer. I don't have to have a person answer those questions. I can get them an answer. I can get them feedback. And again, from a customer perspective, I can solve their needs or their problems quicker. So we're doing stuff with Watson in our call centers today. I talked about the Apple Pay, right? So again, Nationwide, if you're a Nationwide customer today, you can pay with Apple Pay. It's fairly new for us. I actually don't remember when it went in, but we're trying to keep up with the market. So again, hopefully what you see with this stuff is this is industry trends. I'm trying to relate it to Nationwide. It's also true with many other companies. The gentleman from Progressive talked about it. There are opportunities abound for people with IT skills in things that are actually really, really interesting, right? It's not just servers anymore. It's not just being a DBA. You really have the opportunity now to look outside those boxes and take some of these things and figure out how to hone your skills. You're probably not going to get a job day one as a drone expert, right, integrator at a company. But is it something you can shoot for and something that is probably likely on a potential list that you can get to? Yes, absolutely. So again, a lot of new stuff that's coming. Nationwide is also doing blockchain. If you haven't researched blockchain, it's likely the way of the future. We actually have blockchain little snack huts at Nationwide, which is pretty interesting. So you no longer have to carry, quarters in your pocket, right? You just slip your phone up there. It charges you a quarter, and you get your candy bar and things like that. Obviously, blockchain is a financial benefit to us, and we're really trying to figure out how that's going to make a difference at Nationwide. We are a financial services company, and we have to manage a large company itself, and blockchain can be a huge advantage for that. So again, industry trends that are out there. This slide, again, I'm just kind of refining and telling you what Nationwide is working on now. So Nationwide, we have really 4 key technology trends that we're talking about. You can see them on the left: social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. I seriously doubt any of those are, wow factors for any of you. Those are pretty typical things that large companies look at. And then there's some data, right, that we've gathered that shows why these are some of the biggest things we're looking at. The easy one is data. 16 exabytes, you can see that number, per month by the year 2018. If I get this figure right, all of the data that has been created in the world since time was ever kept, all the data from then till now, all of that data, we will have more than twice that data in a year this year, right? So the amount of data that's coming in and what we can do with that and how we use it and whether or not we use data lakes or data warehouses or all those things, huge opportunities for an insurance company, right? Our models are built off analytics. Analytics is the way of the future. So lots and lots of work happening in that space. Mobile, we talked a little bit about mobile. There was a couple questions about security. Buzz neglected to mention, I sometimes like to joke about it and call it the mini mainframe, because you see the Mac commercials that said, oh, you can't get a virus on your Mac. Well, someday he's going to have to protect against that, right? Mobile, huge opportunity for us, right? Not only from a customer perspective, how you pay your bills, how you interact with Nationwide. I saw a statistic not too long ago that most of the people that buy insurance from Nationwide online buy it on a phone or a tablet, right? So again, huge amounts of change just from how people are utilizing your website, right? So my website now needs to be mobile friendly, right? More than it needs to be PC friendly, because that's what people are using. Social, again, I don't think I need to tell this to many people in here. Social is a huge part of the ever-changing technology landscape, right? We talked about LinkedIn, we talked about Facebook, we talked about how people interact and share. Buzz mentioned Box, we mentioned Good Work. There are any number of opportunities for figuring out how to interact with customers, interact with peers and colleagues securely, safely, how to keep that data, how to encrypt that data. Again, things I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. It's a huge part of Nationwide's business, is figuring out mobile. And then the last one, which I'm really going to elaborate on a little bit more, which goes back to the NGI, next generation infrastructure kind of vision that we're talking about, is cloud. Cloud is, it's kind of a generic definition. Again, I'm sure most of you have heard one version of it or another. But it really is just easily accessed, unlimited computing resources. And cloud can exist privately and it can exist publicly, right? So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But just because you're talking cloud doesn't mean you're talking Amazon Web Services, right? Cloud is a concept. Nationwide has an internal cloud, or refining our internal cloud. We will also have connections and capabilities with public clouds, and they will bridge those gaps with things called hybrid clouds, which basically make the two be able to interact with each other and seek all the efficiencies that those have to provide. So what is cloud computing? I talked about it just a little bit briefly there. It's an enabler, right? What it is for me as an enterprise architect, and I not only look across the business, but I look across all the technology domains. So we are departmentalized, but part of the architecture group at Nationwide looks across all of those things and says, what are all the things we need to do to enable the business? And the biggest program, project, work stream, whatever you want to call it, we have going now is around cloud, right? And why is that? Well, it's really for speed. It's really for efficiency. It's really for taking advantage of things that somebody can do better than I can, and I don't need to or want to have the proficiency in doing it, right? Again, think servers. Servers have been the mainstay portion of our, and we have multiple data centers, we have thousands of servers. They have been the mainstay of infrastructure at Nationwide and every other company for the past 10, 20 years, right? Now I'm talking about cloud computing, where I might not even know what the server looks like, or what type of server it is, or if it's actually a server at all, right? It's probably not a Dell, XYZ, whatever it is. It's probably some white box item that lives in a cloud that a company has figured out how to use and connect storage to that can accomplish my needs. And that's really all I care about in some cases. I don't need the hard iron, big iron sitting on the floor. I don't need to touch it. I don't need to cool it down. I don't need to plug my own wires into it. I just want to use somebody else's, because Nationwide is not a technology company. We're an insurance and financial services company. That's how we make money. My job as part of the infrastructure team is to be able to enable that business, right? So cloud really makes that an opportunity that we don't have today. The diagram at the bottom, again, I talked about that a little bit. You talk about on-premise deployment. Again, it's usually, especially companies that are established as well as Nationwide, the premise and where we started, right? Most of our stuff is in our internal environments. We secure it, we manage it there, we plan for it, we refresh it, and all those things. And then the two that you see, the off-premise deployment, right? That's the new thinking, right? Everybody using Amazon Web Services, Azure, Salesforce, ServiceNow. I'll talk a little bit about the differences between those two. But these are all companies that have come on board and said, if you look at Amazon, hey, we can provide infrastructure for you. We can provide it cheaper, right? Oh, you're worried about security? Well, again, I don't know if Buzz is still in here or not, but nobody spends more on security than Amazon. They dwarf the amount of money somebody can spend like Nationwide on security. So people, 3 or 4 years ago talked, I'm never going to put my private information in the cloud. I'm always going to keep that local. Those things are changing. I have slide decks that we built a year ago at Nationwide that say we're going to shy away from putting sensitive data in the cloud. It's really not the case anymore, right? There's a way to do it. There's security and controls you have to do it, but we're not shying away from it, right? We're taking it head on, looking at the capabilities they have to offer and determining what makes sense and what doesn't. Hybrid cloud, the interesting part about hybrid cloud, it really bridges the gap between both of them. So if you think about it, and again, all you guys looking at your classes today and talking about servers, and the gentleman up here talking about the Cisco and network certifications and all that stuff, you know how a server works, you know how it talks to everything. Hybrid clouds gives me the option of taking a server that I have on-premise, right, in my own data center, and for whatever reason, maybe it's an actuarial grid application, and I need extra horsepower to run a computation over the weekend to determine if I should change my rates. Now, in previous worlds, that meant I would have to have a farm of thousands of servers be able to do this computational data, and I need to have them sitting in my data center ready to do this stuff at a moment's notice. Most of the time, they would just sit there, right? In a new model, I can spin those servers up from a hybrid cloud perspective and connect them, right, to my on-premise deployments for that burstable service, right? So I can go to Amazon, I can go to Azure, and I say, hey guys, I need 1,000 cores, right? I just want to use them for 2 hours. If I need 1,000 cores for 2 hours, I can go get them from somebody else as long as I had hybrid cloud capabilities, right, in my back pocket to be able to connect my information in Nationwide to be able to use those resources. And again, hopefully what you see from that is, if I do that on-prem, I do it the old school way, I have to buy those servers. I got to manage those servers, right? I got to secure those servers, all the stuff Buzz talked to you about. If I just want to use them and I just need burstable service, hybrid cloud options become hugely valuable for a company as large as Nationwide. So cloud trends. Shouldn't surprise you again, 86% of enterprises have adopted cloud services in some portion of their business. We argue all the time where Nationwide is. I think all companies would, where you have different views, right? I would tell you we're definitely in the intermediate phase. of where we're doing cloud work from a nationwide perspective and what the other industries look like. But it's a big journey, right? Especially for a company that has as many different applications, as many different groups managing them, right? And as many different types of business that we have today. So again, what we're looking at is to take advantage of what the industry has out there. And the trend is it's not just nationwide. It's all companies, right? And I have some examples coming up. But if you look at kind of the information at the bottom, and this is from Gartner, the worldwide public cloud service market is projected to grow 17.2% to $208 billion. Cloud is not going away, right? We are simply, as consumers of the cloud, as technologists, as companies that use technology to serve their partners and business members, et cetera, are simply going to be trying to figure out how to use this effectively moving forward. And that means tons of change, right? So what I want to really get to there is this is something that every company is going to have to go through. And as you guys are now starting your careers and looking this, it's a great opportunity to get your mindset in a place where cloud is coming and the whole departmentalization and how things used to be and having 6,000 to 10,000 servers in your own data center are changing, right? So understand that this is the way of the future. It's not just nationwide, it's what everybody's doing, and keep that in the back of your mind as you're looking at things you're studying and things you want to do in the lab and things you research and things you know as you walk into interviews, because this is the new skill set that companies need to get from people like you. So industry evolution, value proposition, again, really what this slide says is everyone's doing it, right? You see Johnson & Johnson, see Coca-Cola, you see General Electric, see Boeing. These are not small companies. These are companies that have made an absolute investment in cloud services. Some are ahead of us, some are behind us. And again, those journeys are going to continue for a really long time. The important part of this slide is really the benefits on the right? I talked about increased capability, right? What I can do with features, not only from a pure infrastructure perspective, but think about it from a services perspective, right? You can go to Amazon and get database as a service. I can get Teradata as a service. I can get Redshift as a service. I don't even have to figure out the software. I can just buy it as a service. I can use individual services in my development activities, right? These are all things that if I did in-house, I have to develop. And now, a company like Amazon is simply enabling me to go use it, right? How many nodes do you need? How many customers are you going to have? They ask me one metric, I go out, I use their service, and I don't have to build all that capability. So a huge amount of change coming from that perspective. Efficiency. You can think about it again in terms of just pure economics. The companies that can use white box infrastructure and can use commodity software and open source, and they can manage it themselves, can do things a lot more efficient, especially than small companies, and even in most cases, again, a company as large as Nationwide, even more efficiently than Nationwide. Velocity. I talked a lot about that. It's speed, right? You heard a common trend in all these folks up here, what they talked about. They talked about speed. They talked about the evolution of change. This is not only happening in the industry, but it's happening with the technology, right? If I need something, I need it tomorrow. I can't wait for a process. I can't wait for, if Buzz is still here, I can't wait on security. I have to think about what these demands are up front, and I have to make them available to either my external customers, or in my case, I'm making them available to an internal customer almost immediately, right? As of a couple years ago, Nationwide was 30, 60 plus days to get an environment created. You can just imagine in the technology trends that are doing today, and I have developers that want to develop drone stuff. The last thing they want is to come to me and say, hold on, wait 60 days and I'll get you an environment to actually do your development in. Doesn't go over very well. So that leads into this slide. Talk about an agile culture. This slide really, again, also helps to represent the departmentalization, what it used to be. Up there at the top, you see the old way, right? Not only is this from a department perspective, it's from a function perspective. And again, Nationwide's a big company. We have a lot of things that are, take time to move. I always say it's a big ship and it takes time to turn it in the harbor. We still operate in some cases in the old way where we have people that do specific testing, right? We have departments. They're the database department, right? They're a mainframe department. That's going to change, right? It has to change. And it has to change for reasons, and one of the examples I always use is Amazon. So Nationwide makes a whole bunch of changes to the applications that we have on the internet internally across the year, right? It's thousands of changes. Amazon, when you go and you buy a new pair of socks at Amazon, their code is changing. If you go back and add a tie to that order, their code is changing. Amazon makes about 6-ish million, and somebody who's a math major is going to tell me I'm wrong, 6 million-ish changes a year, which is some number in the hundreds every second, right? And they do that, and the capabilities are that because they've automated processes, they use these new technologies to be able to do it, and they have an agile culture, right? They've built in as part of their process to update code something that can update code and you don't even know it as the end consumer, right? That's a change, right? It's a change from an app dev perspective, and what I will tell you is that change, that whole process of doing things in an agile culture with DevOps and those sorts of things is absolutely moving into the infrastructure space, right? Part of my job right now is getting away from the typical storage, server, and network nodes and looking at things like hyper-converged infrastructure, right? All in one. You no longer manage infrastructure, you manage code, right? So the whole app dev community and what they've done with Agile, what I guess I'm trying to say here is it's moving into infrastructure faster than you might think. So as you're looking at your network technologies and server technologies, and again, all the things that the folks up here who gave you really good information talked about, think about the concept of app dev and how that's going to change for you guys that are getting into this career path now, right? So just because you're an expert in Cisco today doesn't mean your expertise in Cisco applies the same way in the future, right? You're going to be working hand in hand with other team members that are part of things like deploying code, even though you're a network expert, right? And it's because you guys as a team can do that quicker. And that's really the concept I wanted to shape here, is that the whole departmentalization, siloing, a network engineer today is not what a network engineer when I was a network engineer. I have plenty of stories to tell about those things, but it's different, right? And it's an agile culture, and we want people to have, regardless of their skill set and regardless of the way we're using them, we want them to understand how that works, right? You might work directly with a developer in your future job and be a network expert. That didn't happen 5 to 10 years ago. So it's a really big change. So where Nationwide is going, again, next generation infrastructure. I know you had a really good presentation earlier. I saw a slide from, I don't know who the gentleman was that presented it, about the SaaS versus PaaS versus IaaS. It's an interesting concept to kind of talk through. I saw that he had a pizza diagram, and I thought it was a really good way to talk about it, right? So I'm not going to go into detail what those is, but think about SaaS as things you're going to go out and buy, right? I need an HR system. I'm going to go somewhere and I'm going to buy it. And anytime I'm going to put information, I'm going to let them do the development. I'm going to let them keep up with all the codes and regulations and that stuff, and all I'm going to do is connect to it, right? On the other end of that, you think about IaaS, right? Infrastructure as a service. You think about that as the platform itself, right? I don't want to build servers, manage servers, have servers in my inventory at Nationwide, at wherever I work. I want to take advantage of someone else. So I'm going to use their infrastructure, and I'm going to take my support teams and my dev, and I'm going to put it on top of there, and I'm going to make it work somewhere else. And in the middle of that, and this is probably, in my opinion, the hardest one to get a conclusive definition around, is PaaS. In PaaS, again, my definition of PaaS is when you can look at the entire life cycle, right? From development to implementing in production. That is a PaaS opportunity where you as a developer can write your code, test your code, right? Click a button, import your code, have it checked by security, and go into production in one stack, right? So we're giving you development tools, infrastructure, testing capability, and the end state is the hosting model all in one. And again, you will hear multiple people talk about PaaS differently in certain ways. I'm not going to go through this slide in detail. It'd probably bore you to death. But really, again, just as we did our work on next generation infrastructure and really the future of what Nationwide's looking at, there are a ton of specific things you need to look at. The interesting part about this slide, and it was actually a bullet on one of the previous slides up in the right-hand corner that I neglected to talk about, was culture, right? As technologists, you heard, again, your peers up here talking about the work they did and the technologies. Today, technology, work and what I do as an infrastructure architect is not just about the technology. It's about much bigger things, right? I don't talk about technology stacks anymore. I talk about services. And when I talk about services, I talk about potential change in how organizations work, right? I talk about agile culture. I talk about groups of people with different backgrounds and different skill sets all working together on one team now to support a new function. Not necessarily all the database operators sitting in one place waiting for work, right? So there's a whole bunch of things that go into this. Integrated roadmaps, where you talk about value, right? One of the things that I don't typically try to mention in the cloud journey that Nationwide has is that we're trying to focus on cloud. We're focusing on cost, because we're not. We're focusing on speed, we're focusing on being agile, and we're focusing on getting to a place where we can start taking advantage of more of those trends and adopting them quicker to be able to get benefit out to our customer. So again, big thing with cloud, don't forget about the culture, right? Again, really interesting time for all of you guys that are looking at your careers moving forward. You're not going to have to worry about the mainframe person of 25 years and how this is going to affect their job. You're going to walk in with the mindset that this is the normal way to do it, right? Companies like Nationwide are switching that now, right? We're looking for people that understand this methodology. We're looking for people that have network skills, but also understand Java apps, right? Very interesting, very different than the future. So lots of things happening from that perspective. I like this slide, again, especially for you guys, simply because it kind of talks about the change and what's happening, right? So we talk about traditional, it's what we've done for the past several years, and then I talk about next generation. And if you go down there, you kind of look at old school terms and new school terms, right? Some of the ones that I like specifically, right, you go from disaster recovery, right? So I've been an infrastructure architect for 11, 12 years, and disaster recovery was one of my least favorite things to talk about, because we always build servers that we never need, right? Got all this stuff, I might never need it. And then we talk about how to test it. Oh, do we ever really test it good enough? These sorts of things. Now you look at things like chaos engines, right? That sounds way cooler than disaster recovery, right? I mean, this is where things are going, right? There's the word weapon up there. I was like, wow, this is an interesting slide to be able, but again, look at culture, fluid, gameable, right? We want things to move in fluid patterns, not be stuck in silos, not be departmentalized, right? I talked about structure, you talked about departments, now you talk about services, or you talk about cells or units that are delivering, right? And maybe you with a network skill or a VoIP skill or something specifically now moves to different teams to help them engage that sort of stuff. Again, I love the chaos engine. You talk about capacity, right? I guarantee Jim has probably 1,000 stories about capacity, because at Nationwide we spend a lot of time worrying about our capacity. The difference is, moving forward, I'm just going to go get capacity from someone else. Or if I need more, I'm just going to click a button on my Amazon or Observe subscription and add to it, right? So things are changing tremendously. And again, if you look at traditional, which I've been a part of and I'm moving now in my career towards next generation, you guys are really on the precipice of a lot of interesting things that are changing from this traditional model into a new level of thinking. It's not the same old stuff. The jobs are changing, the skill sets are changing, what I need from architects and engineers changing. And again, I would just tell you it's a really exciting time. So last couple slides, again, just in summary, what we're doing with Nationwide, application-oriented infrastructure strategy. Our words, you can talk about it any way you want, but this is the influence of DevOps. This is the influence of Agile. This is the influence of services. And it's really the influence of all those things I put up on that board, right? People want to use Siri. Well, guess what? I don't have a tower at Nationwide that's called a Siri tower or a group to do Siri, right? I need application developers, I need network experts, I need cloud expertise, and they're going to go out and figure out how to make Siri, right, a functional use case for Nationwide's business. Capitalization on cloud technologies. Why wouldn't I, right? The writing's on the wall. Until something drastically changes in the technology universe, there is huge benefits from all aspects in looking at cloud. Defining a user experienced back service delivery model, right? So this is, again, more one of those cultural things, right? I have to look at my end user, I have to look at my internal needs, and I have to build things that aren't just generic and siloed and build servers and strategies around servers. I need to build servers and services and strategies around things that enable my business. And it's different from an IT perspective of just 5 or 6 years ago. Things at the right, what were benefits, right? Improved delivery and cycle time, improved partner experience, more agile environment, and the last one I have on there, because it is kind of an afterthought of all this, is we should save money, right? Which is good for any company. It's not our primary goal. We want to introduce new technology, but out of this, we actually do believe there'll be cost savings. Last slide, talked about a hybrid cloud solution. Nationwide is confident that's the way we're going to move. We're currently in the process of analyzing our applications, both new applications and current applications. So we have a suite of thousands of applications, and I have to figure out what moves and what doesn't. What makes sense and what doesn't, right? If I have a mainframe app, do I want to refactor that mainframe app and put it in the cloud? Or maybe that mainframe app is going away, and I don't need to use it, so there's no point in me doing that, right? So we're actively looking at that. Key value drivers, again, a little bit similar to what I just talked about. Sometimes it's going to make sense, and sometimes it's not. If I have an application that's getting rebuilt and a new application is going to be built, and it's going to be something totally different, I'm not going to invest any time doing that or moving it or refactoring it. I'm going to leave it where it is, let it go, and move on to the next stuff. And then really what we're in the process of now is working on a series of pilots to prove out all these theories. There's 1,000 more theories than what I put up here. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. From my general perspective, take the information you can get from your peers, build relationships. Don't ever underestimate the value of communication for any person, especially people in IT careers. I ask people 2 questions almost every interview to tie into some of the stuff they said. I usually ask people why there's fuzz on a tennis ball. If you don't know, go figure it out. And again, it's not really about the answer, it's about how you answer it, right? And then I always almost ask everyone to sell me a pen that I have in my pocket. And again, I'm hiring IT people. I really want to know how you react to situations. I want to know how you think on your feet. And in a lot of times, I want you to figure out, if I have to send you to the CIO of Nationwide to talk about something and he asks you a question, how are you going to react to it, right? Are you going to freak out and not know the answer or panic, do those sorts of things? Again, don't underestimate the value of communication. I've done most of the jobs you guys talked about, most of the jobs you are looking for in your career moving forward, and I spend more time in my day, every day at Nationwide, talking than I do anything else. I'm talking about technology, right? But it's very important that my job, I can communicate effectively to the people that are making these things happen, the people that are investing in these things to happen, and the people that are actually consuming these services on the end that say, ooh, that's a value add to me. Oh, I had one more slide. This slide is really just an example. It's not Nationwide specific, but it kind of just tells you what Nationwide and other big companies are looking at from how they're going to break stuff down. So something like some portion of our business will move to software as a service. You see some things up there. Obviously, Salesforce, big one there. Some portion of our business will move to public cloud, private IaaS stacks. Some portion of our business will move to private PaaS and IaaS stacks. And then some of it's just going to stay the way it is today, right? Whether it's mainframe or an app that's going away or something I don't want to mess with, we're going to have a strategy that maps all these things out. And over the next several years, we're going to execute it. And I need more people with more technology experience and the aptitude to take on all those new things, whether it's drone or Watson or cognitive thinking or virtual reality, right, and make all those things happen. So again, thank you guys for your time. I'll take any questions you have. And again, really appreciate just the opportunity to speak to you and give you some of the insight that I have. Questions? Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Ted.
Autonomous vehicles are going to be disruptive. Do you know, to what extent that's going to be?
Nah, well, I don't know that anyone knows.
I mean, can you assume?
I think we can assume that as the market grows for that stuff, you're going to see especially people like insurance companies figuring out how to take advantage of it, right? So I don't know that I have a specific answer for you, but the capabilities that autonomous vehicles provide is still, not necessarily mainstream. But once autonomous vehicles come online, you're going to start seeing that trend evolve into other places as well. From an insurance company, I have benefit in understanding those trends to the extent that there's information to get in front of them, right? If I can opportunity to offer people autonomous services and potentially change their insurance based on the amount of time they use autonomous vehicles, or if they're using autopilot services, maybe I give them a discount because I've seen rates change like that. There's a huge amount of potential impact. I would just tell you, I think that specific technology trend is probably too new to know exactly how it's going to affect us from an industry perspective.
So like that actually was my question. So
Okay.
now with it being autonomous, would it still be mandated that users or drivers have it since there will no longer be user error? Not no longer, but reduced user error.
Again, I don't know that there's regulation to that, but I would tell you I think the answer is going to be yes in some facet, right? Typically insurance, and I'm not, believe it or not, an insurance expert, so I won't claim to say this is 100% true, but typically the insurance is on the person, right? So typically the insurance is on the person, and we as a company are likely going to have to figure out now how to insure a person that doesn't have a car, right? So I think that's the change that we're really looking at, and again, nothing currently happening right now that I can tell you that we're looking at, but it is going to change the way we look at insurance 100%.
So you mentioned that you're getting rid of thousands of servers or hundreds of servers regularly and going to the cloud. So how is this impacting the number of jobs that are available out there?
That's a great question.
Because not just servers, I mean, you're also using cloud services, APIs, CRMs are in the cloud. So there's lots of things that are being automated. So how is this reshaping the job market? Are you hiring less people? Are you hiring the same amount of people? So how is this evolving?
So great question and tremendously applicable to the topic we had. We're not hiring less people, right? What we're doing is we're hiring and needing different skill sets, right? That goes from the external market, right? People like you that would be looking for jobs. It actually is also the internal market, right? So I, as an enterprise architect, talking about all these things I talked to you about, am doing things like the people that used to provision servers, I don't need those people anymore, right? But what I'm not doing is I'm not saying I no longer need provisioners, right? I'm going to my workforce, I'm going to my current workforce and new workforce saying, I don't need that skill set anymore. I've got a new skill set, right? I need people that understand DevOps, right? Need people that understand API management and API governance and those sorts of things. And I'm actively changing the skill mix on my workforce from old school server database to cloud-based and DevOps-based skill sets. And we have active training in place. And what I will tell you is, again, if we are looking for new people, the needs are coming from these trends, not the old school trends. I have plenty of people at Nationwide that have mainframe and database and have been DBAs for 20 years, right? I'm looking for people that can bridge the gaps on some of these new capabilities with new skill sets and new thinking, right? It's not even necessarily new skill sets as much as new thinking. So the final answer there is we're not reducing, we're changing. In fact, I would tell you there's probably more jobs available in the IT space at Nationwide. They are different jobs, right? So again, like any big company, we have some people that don't want to change, and that's a challenge, right? It's not something you guys have to worry about, but if I'm a mainframe COBOL programmer or something, there's not a lot of stuff happening in those spaces, right? These spaces, tremendous amount. So again, as you're looking at your career moving forward, be open to opportunities. Take the opportunities that come your way, right? You're likely not to get your first job, the job you expected right out of. I started as a budget analysis for the Department of Defense, right? I did my first budget. It was absolutely awful. I told my boss something. He said, hey, can you fix this on my computer? I fixed it. I was in another department like the next week, right? Take the opportunities to get where you want to go. If you have the aptitude and you are able, especially in the IT field, and again, I give tons of credit for Jim. I'm sure you've heard him talk before. Technology is an understanding, the ability to communicate and talk about technology and work with a business partner, the gentleman from Progressive, right? He talked about his background. He's a technologist. He has a technology career. He spends 50% of his day or more, I bet, talking to people that don't understand that side. And he's got to do the interpretation, right, back and forth. So hugely important, even more so dependent in the future, as I'm not going to be worrying about things like servers and underlying networks and those things in the past. So skill sets are the major things that are changing, not the number of jobs. Other questions in the back?
On your chart outlining the change in thinking from the traditional to the next generation, under open source, has it changed from cost saver to a weapon?
I knew somebody was going to ask.
Open source?
Yeah. So the reason it says that, and again, it wasn't my slide, so I'm not going to say why they chose the word. But it is an interesting word to describe the change that's happened in the IT industry. And again, I'll speak from a nationwide perspective. 10 years ago, if you were to ask me to implement something open source, I'd have looked at you like you were crazy, right? What was the benefit? Maybe cost, but what about risk, right? Who was I gonna call in the middle of the night if I had a problem with my operating system that some guy named, whatever in Sweden developed? Wasn't the case. So really the case moving forward is it's a change in thinking. Open source is now the new norm, right, when it comes down to it. So if you talk about weapon, what it really means is there are so many advantages in those capabilities from an open source perspective. You're actually doing yourself a disservice not to look at them, even in a company as large as Nationwide, right? Do I really need Microsoft to back me? Do I really need IBM to back me? I'm a really big company, right? I have 10,000 IT people. How many times do I actually call them for support, right? Not very many. Small companies, right? They don't have as much risk to deal with, so it's a huge benefit for them too. So again, the word weapon is somewhat controversial, but really what it's trying to say is, in the past, you looked at it purely for cost savings, and it was usually for the small startup Y2K company because they had no capital to invest in the real solution. And that's actually changed 100%. Now you have companies that have $200 billion worth of assets going, do I really want to pay Teradata if I can use a service at Amazon that does the same thing and I get service from it? So it's really about the way of thinking and using it in those critical success factors that that weapon kind of word comes from. So hopefully that answers your question. Other questions? Sorry. Couple minutes. Well, if you do, again, I'll make sure you guys all have my information. Would love to be able to talk to any one of you if you have future questions about your career. I think you've got a lot of good information today. The last thing that I'll add, and I thought Buzz did a great job, for all of you that, I assume most of you watch TV, it's also hugely interesting from a technology perspective and a cybersecurity landscape perspective. You haven't seen the show Mr. Robot. I think it's on USA. There's 2 seasons of it. If that doesn't get you excited in one way, hopefully it's a good gene, not the bad gene, but if that doesn't get you excited about the potential and things that can happen and things you can be a part of, again, whether you're securing against it or using some of those things to your advantage in a Fortune 100 company to make their customer base better, really cool opportunity to check that show out. So anyway, thank you for your time.